Lundy Island. Situated in the Bristol Channel, 11 miles off the North Devon coast, only 3 miles long and half a mile wide, is home to a diverse range of bird life and marine life. The steep, rocky cliffs along its west coast are exposed to the full force of the weather fronts coming in over the Celtic Sea, whilst the more secluded east coast, with its sheltered coves, hosts a diverse array of marine habitats, along with some of Lundy's more conspicuous and charismatic residents, the Atlantic grey seals. Lundy is certainly a special and unique little island, but could it also hold a key to a future where marine life is protected and allowed to thrive, whilst providing sufficient abundance to sustain neighbouring fisheries?
Well, the fishing's always been good round Lundy. It's been a spectacular fishery for years.
Everybody's looking now at how you can sustain the industry and keep it going forward.
We're quite lucky that Lundy's quite close to us. And Lundy's a brilliant place to go lobster and crab fishing.
Along Lundy's east coast, there's a small area of sea of approximately 4 square kilometres in which all fishing has been banned for reasons of nature conservation. This is the Lundy No Take Zone. Set up in 2003, it is the first legally enforced no fishing area in UK waters. Interestingly, could preventing fishing in these waters actually increase local fishing catches? Could it be that this island is a key to a future where nature and local fisheries can both thrive? Lessons from Lundy may provide the answers.
So Lundy Island is a pioneer in marine conservation. It was one of the first voluntary marine nature reserves and the first no-take zone in the UK. So it's a really important test case and model of how marine protection can work.
The voluntary reserve was set up because what was found here in the early 70s was thought to be really quite special compared with other areas that had been surveyed by scuba divers primarily.
So there's a high marine species diversity around here, which is one of the reasons that it was seen as like a gem in our UK marine coast.
It's absolutely fantastic down there. We've got colourful marine life around our shores. Some of it's fragile, some of it needs protecting.
It was appreciated that the habitats that were here around the island were really quite varied and numerous, which meant that in a very small area, you then had a huge amount of biodiversity associated with those habitats.
And the icing on the cake was finding a small, bright yellow cup coral, which we call the sunset cup coral these days, in large numbers on the knoll pins, which is halfway up the island there, and it was new to Britain. And it's still a nationally rare species.
In addition to the Lundy No Take Zone and the ones off Arran and Flamborough Head, 3 new highly protected marine areas have recently been designated within England's coastal waters. Marine protected areas are like underwater national parks, acting as sanctuaries for plants, animals and ecosystems, helping to safeguard our ocean's future and ensuring vulnerable species and habitats are protected. Highly protected marine areas, like Lundy's No Take Zone, are a type of marine protected area which offer the strictest possible environmental protections, meaning that only non-damaging activities such as swimming, kayaking or scuba diving are allowed. Activities like fishing, and in particular trawling and dredging, which damage the seabed, are prohibited, so these areas can recover and return to a wild and natural state.
Blue Marine is actually calling for 10% of UK waters to be established as no-take zones, or as they're called now, highly protected marine areas. And it's really only by really stopping all fishing activities, not just necessarily trawling, that we can see the benefits of leaving some areas of our seas as safe havens.
Having an area which is protected to be as close as possible to natural gives us that reference point to see what changes are taking place, because there will be quite natural changes, and how that relates to places which are affected by human activities.
Protecting Lundy's east coast hasn't just benefited the ecosystem within the no-take zone. Its benefits have also spread beyond its boundaries.
The no-take zone was initially set up to be able to protect a lot of the delicate species that are found off that east side of Lundy. So it wasn't primarily for the fisheries interests, but we knew that by not allowing the fisheries into that bit, that the lobsters and crabs were probably going to do pretty well.
They give the marine life a chance, and the local potters from around the surrounding coasts are now catching many more lobsters and crabs just outside, the sanctuary. And so what we've done is created a sustainable sort of hatchery or protected area which will allow them to continue fishing for generations to come.
Protected areas like the Lundy No Take Zone not only provide a safe haven for many species, but they also provide nursery areas for commercial fish. As a result, it is believed that as thriving populations grow, they then spill over into surrounding areas where they can support and maintain sustainable fisheries. But further restriction of fishing areas has been a tough proposal to sell to a fishing community that has already been hit very hard.
I think a lot of boats are tying up because they can't afford it. When I first started, the price of pots were like £60 and now they're up to £120 a pot.
Oh, the volume of fishermen in the area has gone down dramatically, even in the short time I've lived in the southwest. But any fisherman you speak to now will tell you, I would say in the last 15 years, they're probably now working 2, if not 3 times the volume of gear of what they were working 15 years ago. And that's why the catches have gone down.
Since 1996, the number of fishing vessels in the UK fleet has fallen by 33%. Today, those that remain land approximately 400,000 tonnes of fish each year in the waters around the United Kingdom. To sustain the industry at its current level, the population of fish stocks needs to increase and be maintained.
I think you'll find with most fishermen nowadays, they're looking for sustainability. No, you haven't got what we had perhaps back in the very early days of let's take everything out to sea. Everybody knows now that this has got to be a way forward.
Recent proposals to close off parts of the UK coastline to all fishing activities have proved controversial.
What have they got in this document? The only mention of fishermen is that what they do is destructive. Why didn't the government sit down with fishermen at the beginning? After all, no one's got a more interest in fishermen than preserving stocks for the future. No one knows more about it than they do. You can't convince me that an academic working in a university behind a typewriter knows more than the fisherman working the sea.
A lot of the backlash has understandably come from the fishing industry. This sector of the UK economy is already experiencing significant pressures and difficulties. So any suggestions of further restrictions have been met with strong opposition.
You can't bloody put that area there because that's not going to work. We all want to earn a fair living, but the fishermen want to have a fair fishery to get that living out of.
If you think that your livelihood is going to be threatened, then of course you'd be concerned, and I would understand that. I think over the years, the surveys and monitoring that we've done with others in the no-take zone has proven without a shadow of a doubt that actually it's hugely beneficial for local fishermen if it's allowed to sustain itself.
I think definitely there'll be apprehension about it, and because there isn't enough consultation. You get bits of pieces put out by scientists and other officials, but they don't actually come and talk to the local harbours because everywhere is different.
Being the longest established no-take zone, Lundy offers the best opportunity in the UK to see the effect of these control measures. What is needed is up-to-date data on how the marine environment is doing as a result of its protection. To celebrate the 50th anniversary of the creation of the Marine Protected Area at Lundy, Robert Irvin conducted a survey of marine life around the island to measure the effectiveness of the no-take zone. This was funded by Blue Marine Foundation.
We're doing the study at Lundy because this is the first marine nature reserve in Britain. And I think there should have been rather more monitoring to find out what its actual impact has been than there probably has been through government cuts and so on. So why couldn't we just step in, we thought to ourselves, and actually provide that monitoring, find out what the the current situation is and what benefits it's delivering for nature and for fishing in this area.
The 50th anniversary study on Lundy was carried out over a period of 12-day visits to the island, where 50 pots were used to catch, measure and record size and abundance of both lobster and crab. Catches were then compared within the no-take zone to those around the rest of the island. So what did the study actually find? Is there in fact a measurable impact on commercial stocks? Some of the results were astonishing.
We found that there were again 4 times as many lobsters in total, but in fact for the commercial size lobsters, we were up to 6.6 times as many lobsters within the no-take zone as opposed to outside it. So it's really showing that the no-take zone is very good for helping to protect these stocks, allowing them to multiply, and by having more females in the area, you get more eggs produced, which can then disperse to other areas as well.
If there is an overspill, you know, them fishermen are benefiting.
When populations of marine life reach a critical mass within a location, it is believed that they spill out into other nearby areas. This is what is referred to as the spillover effect. Overpopulation is a direct impact of no-take zones, where marine life is allowed to regenerate. Fishermen in the area have noticed this change and have responded positively.
This breeding zone and the off-spill of that is massive.
We know that the movement across, because of some of the survey work that's done with tagging and monitoring, is coming onto the North Devon coast, onto the Welsh coast, and even travelling down into North Cornwall.
We used to shoot there twice a year in the summer, and we would catch in a string of 35 pots. We would catch on a good day 10 lobsters and 35. But more often than not, less than that. There was never the lobsters on the ground that there is now to the 20-year rest. There is a direct impact of just being left and untouched. Yeah, the size of the fish, it's just wonderful.
The study has thrown up some interesting potential side effects of the success of the no-take zone. Some side effects that have taken many by surprise.
Just too many lobsters.
There's too many lobsters?
Yeah, there's too many lobsters.
Lobsters are cannibals, they'll kill each other. And a small lobster, yeah, he will go out, he will do a runner. He ain't going to stay anywhere where he's going to get killed.
There's too many lobsters. In such a short period of ground, the top half mile so heavily with male lobsters coming up with one claw where they've been fighting, it'd be worth the research, see if you could make something further off to kind of, or move the lobsters further down the island, make ground for them.
On the face of it, this appears to be a major win for both marine conservation and the fishing industry. Any initial apprehension over the introduction of more highly protected marine areas would therefore seem unfounded. But how do we ensure that it's kept safe?
I'm in favour of no-take zones, but they need to be policed and they need to be managed.
I suppose the biggest fear would be that there's no physical fence around the no-take zone. There's nothing actually to say no entry. There's always the risk that some fishermen, maybe even from overseas, on the continent perhaps, would just go through the whole area with its trawl and devastate the area. And there's nothing to stop them doing it. There would be just the threat of a fine afterwards if they were apprehended.
So it is quite hard to tell from the land if a boat's in the no-take zone or not. Sometimes it's really obvious if they're very close in.
We police it now. We go alongside the boats that are fishing, like we did at the weekend. I went, excuse me, you're not supposed to be fishing here. Oh, they know that. Give them a leaflet. They do know it.
Although local stakeholders are actively involved in helping to police the area, responsibility for the monitoring of the highly protected marine area lies with the Devon and Severn IFCA.
We're a statutory body created under the Marine and Coastal Access Act 2009. We've got the responsibility to manage the exploitation of sea fishery resources within our district.
Now, they have not got what they call enough resources. In other words, enough personnel, because there's not enough money in the kitty to pay for more people to police the areas.
I'm very much in favour of having a no-take zone as long as it is monitored. There's no point putting it in place and then not watching what's going on. And the monitoring at the moment is very little. So how do we know that it is working most efficiently? It's not a problem that it's working, but is it working most efficiently?
We're the largest district, largest mobile gear fleet, but we've got the lowest annual budget. But that does, in one regard, really restrain us in terms of how much work we can do, particularly on two coasts. Lack of resources really does stop us doing more than we could do in our management of fisheries.
With an established breeding ground in place, and with high levels of fishing stocks temptingly bordering the catch zone, fishers will need convincing that the authorities are vigilant and able to police it effectively. This seems overwhelming, especially with over 4,500 square kilometres to keep an eye on, and a low budget to support them. So what is the Devon and Severn IFCA doing to keep up its end of the bargain? How do they stop people from exploiting the no-take zone?
We introduced inshore vessel monitoring systems which track the vessels in 2018. That provides us with data on where they are and what speed they're doing every 3 minutes. So we can monitor their activity that way, which for the size of the district is the only way that we can really monitor that activity. And we're taking it a step further now with a project that we started in September 2021, where we're using cameras and gear sensors. So every time the gear goes into the water, the cameras send up the video footage that's happening on the deck at that time to confirm that the fishing gear has gone in the water.
This innovative approach from the Devon and Severn IFCA will come as a relief to many. They are clearly leading the way for other IFCAs to follow. With the aid of modern technology, it is now possible for authorities to monitor the activity of vessels within highly protected marine areas remotely in a cost-effective and efficient way. But this does require buy-in and support from fishers if it's to be successful. So how do you convince them and satisfy conservationists at the same time? The debate is ongoing.
There's too much pressure now from NGOs, non-government organisations, the green industry and the conservationists. They seem as though they carry a heavier presence now than what the fishing industry does. And I think if we sit round the table, have some constructive conversations, I think there's a way out for everybody.
You know, it's very interesting how these consultations work for things like highly protected marine areas and indeed the marine conservation zones. The fishermen, the yachtsmen are very, very well organised, and they will dominate some of the stakeholder group meetings which make decisions about where these sites will go and so on. My belief is that it ought to be the scientists that dominate, that say where there are areas which would benefit from no-take legislation. And the joke always is that the fishermen will be okay if they say the words, "Oh, you can have one there because we don't go there."
Uncertainty and apprehension is to be expected when livelihoods are at stake. This is as true now as it was back when the Marine Protected Area was first established on Lundy. But how do you go about setting up an initiative like this?
The voluntary reserve was relied on really the goodwill of those using the area, so primarily fishermen who were here, and we had to persuade them that really what Lundy had to offer in terms of its marine life shouldn't be trashed by fishing gear. The fishermen at first were rather reluctant to agree to allow statutory bylaws to be introduced to stop them doing certain things. But at the same time, they could appreciate that there should be some areas around the country that should be free of fishing pressure. So they were welcoming to it in the long run.
From the beginning, a stakeholder group was set up to allow all parties to have a say in how the Marine Protected Area was run. It provided a forum for fishers and conservationists to air their grievances and to reach compromises. Something that's been at the heart of the success of the Marine Reserve.
So it's all interwoven. And everybody who uses the marine protected area around the island, or indeed the terrestrial side of it, do get a voice at the table and get their views heard.
Lundy's model proves the importance of stakeholder involvement from the very start. this will be fundamental to the future of marine protection and sustainable fisheries.
Well, in many cases, we've been working with fishermen around the UK on a number of marine protected area projects, and many of those fishermen are keen to see better management of the seas.
When you start saying, no, you can't go in there, you can only go in there certain times of the month, well, let's have that. But let's have some rules and regulations which are formed by the fishermen themselves. So both sides all work together.
I think consultation's got to be sit around the table. A staggered approach is definitely the best way forward, and also with some compensation.
Amongst the disagreements, both sides can acknowledge that proper consultation is the way towards a compromise that yields a win-win for everyone, including some form of compensation in the short term. But compensation doesn't necessarily have to be in the form of direct remuneration.
So the only way you're going to do it, if you're going to reduce that man's volume of pots from 1,800 down to 600, he has to have incentive.
Back when the No Take Zone was set up, that Natural England introduced something like 1,000 lobster hatchlings around the coast of Ilfracombe and North Devon and as an investment for the future.
But certainly the thing is that there may be a sacrifice of fishing grounds in setting up some of these areas, but ultimately they have been shown to enhance local fisheries as well. So there's a win-win all round.
And the fundamental thing is just getting the confidence of the local stakeholders, as in the fishermen.
With the right incentives and proper consultation, Lundy has proven that marine protected areas can work for everyone. But are there enough similarities between Lundy and the rest of the UK coastline to allow this model to work elsewhere?
I think it's important to realise that although Lundy is separated from the mainland, it's very much part of what it is the same geology, it's got the same water around it. So although what's here is really quite special, there are patches on the mainland which are also similarly special. And in fact, the pressures on the mainland are far greater than here.
I think keeping the same Lundy model may not be great for everywhere, because Lundy is so unique in having an island that's 3 miles long and just over half a mile wide in the middle of the channel. So it may not work in bays and estuaries and items close to the coast, but it's certainly worth looking at. And providing you've got the monitor in place, you will know very quickly whether it's working or not.
Any no-take zone could be replicated anywhere, providing when you look at the conservation model, what are you conserving? Are you conserving just what is going to be in the area, or are you concerning yourself with the fishermen themselves?
There would be even more support for the introduction of these if it could be really well evidenced and thought out and demonstrated to have been really well thought out in terms of why we want to locate it here, and these are the potential benefits. I think that would be a great way to sort of communicate it for everybody to really get behind them, where it really wants to be pure and simple for the benefit of the marine environment and for all of us that enjoy it in whichever aspect we choose to do that.
You need to set them up at intervals, something sensible. You can't just close off vast areas because nobody will abide by it. It just cause confrontation and take years and years to get through. But they need to be dotted around everywhere, offshore and inshore.
I think the answer is not to put a blanket ban on everywhere around the coast. Do it gradually, and give the fishermen an opportunity to still sustain a living. And if I was in their position, I'd have those concerns. And I'd want to be reassured that I'm still going to be able to feed my family at the end of the week. So, it needs a lot of consultation, but we've shown here that it can work.
Each site is unique, and you're going to have to work in collaboration and also get on board your community and really listen to them when you're putting these in place.
And a lot of research, because you don't want to go and try and do something and actually do more harm than good. It's a hard one.
There's means and ways, and that can be done. But somebody has to stick their head above the parapet and get it underway.
Lundy stakeholders are convinced that this model can and should be replicated anywhere across the mainland shores. They agree that open consultation and compromise is paramount from the outset. But to be effective, it is clear that a few isolated areas around the UK aren't going to have a big enough impact to support and sustain the entire fishing industry and conserve what is natural. Can there in fact be a win-win for everyone?
I think there's enough fishery around places like Lundy and other areas to sustain a small no-take zone, and I think the Lundy model has shown that you don't have to protect everywhere. If you take a small percentage of an area and let that gradually grow, then you'll gradually see the benefits.
You'll feel the effect now, but in 50 years' time, your children, your grandchildren will be thanking you.
So what we really need in Britain is a network of marine protected areas. We can't just have 3 no-take zones, which is what we currently have. So we need more highly protected marine areas.
You only have to see the results of what we captured in no-take zone in Lundy. And those big 1.5 kilo buried lobsters with thousands of eggs that are just untouched have been able to carry on and repopulate the grounds. And this is a no-brainer, absolute no-brainer.
And of course, you can bring people here and show them without a shadow of a doubt the evidence to show that it does work and what the benefits will be.
No-take zone's brilliant.
Why?
Well, it's just an area of natural beauty. It's just wonderful. Should do it more in more places.
Lundy has shown that no-take zones can be beneficial to fishing as well as to conservation. Protecting marine life helps the fishing industry prosper. The overwhelming evidence to come out of North Devon suggests that there are benefits for all, if key stakeholders are involved from the very start. Locations must be carefully considered and buy-in from everyone must be achieved if it's to be successful. Important decisions need to be made, and there will have to be compromise on both sides. What is clear though, is what has been achieved on Lundy can be an example for the rest of the UK to follow. To safeguard our seas and the livelihoods of those who depend on them for the future.